Blue and red lights danced across the dark ripples of Lake Merin, splashing against my cabin walls like a disco from hell. The reflection turned the pine trees into streaks of color, chaotic, pulsing, wrong. "Mr. Harlan, step away from the property." The deputy's voice cracked through the night air, his hand hovering near his holster. The smell of lake mud and wet asphalt hung heavy, sharp with the metallic tang of tension. And there she was, Claudia Hensley, president of the Merin Bluffs HOA, standing behind him like a general in heels. Arms crossed. Designer sunglasses perched on her head even though the sun was long gone. Her SUV idled behind her, engine purring like a predator waiting to strike. "He's trespassing," she shrieked. "He broke into my lake house. My lake house. My grandfather's cabin. My deed, notarized, sealed, and filed decades before her subdivision ever existed." The cuffs snapped around my wrists, cold metal biting into skin. The kind of cold that burns pride more than flesh. "Sir," the deputy said, reading from his tablet, "the HOA has filed multiple complaints of property invasion and destruction. You're under temporary detainment pending verification." Claudia's smirk widened, slow and poisonous. She folded her arms like victory itself was a pose she'd practiced. "Take him off his own land," she said sweetly. "Let's see how the law feels about breaking the law." The flash from her phone camera lit up my face. She was recording it, evidence of her little triumph. But before the deputy could finish the paperwork, my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I nodded toward it. "Mind if I answer? It's the state attorney's office." He hesitated. "Go ahead." I hit speaker. A calm voice came through the static. "Judge Harlan, this is State Attorney Weston. We've received your call. The warrant's ready. We're moving on your report." The deputy's head snapped up. Claudia blinked, confusion breaking through that smug mask. I smiled. Slow, deliberate, judicial. "Ma'am," I said, my voice level as still water, "you might want to call your lawyer. You just trespassed on a sitting district judge's property." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then the color drained from her face. Fast, like the tide pulled out by a sudden storm. That was the night everything changed. But to understand how it came to this, to the flashing lights, the cuffs, and the fall of an empire, let me rewind and tell you how it all started. My name's David Harlan. 54 years old. County circuit judge for most of my adult life. For over 2 decades, I've worn the same black robe and weighed truth against deceit, one gavel strike at a time. I've seen con men cry, liars swear they're saints, and thieves quote scripture as they're cuffed. But nothing in all those years prepared me for her. This land, 12 acres of pine, granite, and memory wrapped around the north shore of Lake Merin, has been my family's heartbeat since 1946. My grandfather bought it right after returning from the war, traded 2 years of savings and 1 broken tractor for this patch of paradise. He built the cabin by hand, plank by plank. You can still see the hammer marks in the beams if the morning light hits just right. Back then, the lake was wild. No fences, no bylaws, no committees pretending to be governments. Just fishermen, loons, and wind carving ripples through water clear enough to see 20 feet down. My father was raised here. I was raised here. 3 generations of Harlans learned to respect land, law, and silence on this soil. After my wife and passed away 5 years ago, I left the courthouse bench and came home for good. This place became my refuge, the one constant that grief couldn't touch. I rebuilt the old dock, refinished the cedar porch, repaired the roof with my own hands, the way my grandfather once did. Above the front door hangs a weathered sign, hand-carved and sun-bleached. Harlan Lake House, Isti 1946. It's not just a name. It's a promise, one that every generation of my family has kept. Never sell, never surrender, and never let arrogance rewrite ownership. For a while, life was simple again. Mornings started with coffee on the dock and the low hum of fishing boats out on the far side. Evenings ended with crickets and a single lamp burning beside my wife's old rocking chair. Then came the noise. Construction. Hammers. Generators. The sharp, unnatural sound of progress. The Marin Bluffs Homeowners Association arrived like a storm front from the city. Rows of identical beige homes with imported lawns and vinyl fences that glowed like plastic under the sun. Their slogan? Rural living with urban class. Translation: move to the country, then complain it's not the suburbs. They paved over the old trailhead that used to lead to the state forest. Installed electronic gates on the public access road. Built a members-only marina that blocked half the natural shoreline. I stayed invisible. Paid my taxes. Kept my gate locked. Never complained. Because when you've spent a lifetime judging disputes, you learn that some fires die faster when starved of oxygen. But peace only lasts as long as pride allows it. And Claudia Hensley, the newly crowned HOA president, had the kind of pride that doesn't die, it spreads. She called it community standards. I called it control-wearing lipstick. And from the moment she laid eyes on my cabin, she decided that my existence, my heritage, didn't fit her version of perfection. That's when the real story began. You could smell Claudia Hensley's ambition before she ever opened her mouth. The mechanical hum of her idling Lexus filled the morning air, a steady, smug vibration that didn't belong this far from asphalt. Even the air changed around her, perfume sharp as citrus, mixed with the acrid scent of fresh tar from the HOA's newly paved road. She climbed out wearing stilettos that sank into my gravel driveway with every step. The sound, click, crunch, click, was a warning shot dressed as confidence. Her expression said queen addressing peasant long before her mouth confirmed it. Judge or not, she said, tilting her head with that polished, condescending smile. You're inside Marin Bluff's visual zone. Your cabin's non-conforming. The board voted unanimously. You'll need to repaint, re-roof, and remove that dock. The audacity almost made me laugh. I thought it was a prank, or maybe a misunderstanding. Ma'am, I said, this land isn't part of your HOA. It predates your subdivision by 70 years. Her lips parted in a practiced sigh, the kind people use before correcting someone they think is beneath them. Everything within sightline of our private road, she said, is subject to community standards. We have legal counsel, Judge Harlan. I remember the way she said judge, like it was an inconvenience, not an honor. Behind her, two men in polos and clipboards, her self-appointed compliance team, pretended to take photos of my property. I recognized one. Her brother-in-law, Dennis. Local realtor, part-time gossip, full-time parasite. I told them to leave. They didn't. Instead, Claudia gestured toward my dock like she was inspecting a crime scene. This structure, she declared, is degrading community aesthetics. Our buyers expect lakefront symmetry. Lakefront symmetry. I'd heard legal jargon, political spin, and every shade of arrogance in my career, but that phrase still stands as one of the most ridiculous. I tried to reason with her. Claudia, your association doesn't have jurisdiction here. You're talking about private, deeded land. There's a stone marker at the property line dated 1946. You can't regulate what you don't own. Her smile froze, tight and dangerous. We'll see about that, she said. Marin Bluffs maintains strong relationships with the county zoning office. Don't make this adversarial. That line, don't make this adversarial, was her favorite trick. Passive threat wrapped in civility. Every HOA tyrant uses it. It's the unspoken warning. We'll ruin you politely. She turned, her perfume lingering like smoke after a small explosion. The Lexus door shut with the kind of authority that money buys, and she rolled down the window just far enough to deliver her parting shot. Consider this your formal notice. The board meets next week to discuss non-compliance. You'll be hearing from us. The tires hissed as she sped off, scattering gravel across my boots. For a few seconds, I just stood there, listening to the sound fade into the pines. That was her first aggressive move, claiming jurisdiction where none existed. That was also my first mistake, underestimating how far power-hungry people will go to fabricate authority. Because Claudia wasn't just another HOA busybody with too much time and too little purpose. She was something far more dangerous, a politician without an office. And she had just chosen the wrong man to play power games with. It started small, like most wars do. The first strike came in pastel pink. Fake violation notices taped to my mailbox, printed on expensive stationery that smelled faintly of floral perfume and cheap authority. Violation number 113. Non-compliant exterior finish. Violation number 221. Unauthorized lighting installation. Violation number 338. Improper water usage. Each one signed with flourish. Claudia Hensley, HOA President. At first, I laughed. You have to, when the absurdity hasn't yet crossed into threat. Then came the invoices. $250 for the non-compliant finish, $500 for illegal dock lighting, and $1,200 for unapproved water use. Every letter arrived by certified mail, hand-delivered by her nephew, who called himself compliance officer. I ignored them. I'd spent decades interpreting actual law. I wasn't about to bend for invented ones. But when you ignore a tyrant, you don't silence them, you challenge their ego. So Claudia escalated. It began with what she called community safety patrols. Translation: her nephew and two of his gym buddies in security uniforms they probably bought online, cruising our dirt road in an unmarked SUV with flashing yellow lights. They'd park near my gate at dusk, windows down, radio static hissing through the quiet. One morning I stepped outside to the low buzz of a drone hovering above my roof, camera lens trained directly on my deck. I waved. It didn't move. 2 minutes later, it zipped off toward the Marin Bluffs entrance like a mechanical mosquito retreating to its hive. The next day, I found a stop work order nailed to the side of my boathouse. Cease unauthorized construction. Marin Bluffs Enforcement Division. Stamped, signed, and dated by Claudia herself. I didn't know whether to laugh or call the sheriff. I chose laughter, though it sounded hollow in the empty air. But harassment has a way of seeping under your skin. One day it's an annoyance, the next it's an infestation. By midsummer, I was getting calls from county offices. Mr. Harlan, we received multiple complaints about illegal fuel dumping near your lake. Fuel dumping. That accusation cut through my patience. I'd spent years prosecuting environmental violations, people who actually poisoned land for profit, and now I was being accused of it. I invited the county inspector out myself. We took soil samples, ran chemical tests. The results: negative. Completely clean. False report. Filed anonymously. No prizes for guessing who sent it. But each investigation meant forms, signatures, follow-ups. Hours of my time siphoned into nonsense. Death by bureaucracy, her favorite weapon. Then came the noise complaints. 5:03 a.m. Tractor operating before sunrise. 7:14 p.m. Chainsaw noise exceeding decibel limits. Never mind that I didn't own a tractor or a chainsaw. By autumn, Claudia had turned pettiness into policy. Every time I opened my mailbox, there was something waiting. A fine, a notice, a warning, a threat. Neighbors began avoiding me. The community grapevine twisted truth into legend. Judge Harlan's been violating environmental codes. His property's under review for demolition. He's suing the HOA out of spite. None of it true. All of it effective. It's easy to ignore a liar. Harder to ignore the lie when it's printed, posted, and whispered over coffee. And through it all she stayed polished, smiling at every board meeting, posing for photos beside the Marin Bluffs welcomes you sign like the face of civic virtue. But every tyrant overplays their hand eventually. And I started to notice something. The rhythm of her harassment wasn't random. Every violation she issued, every complaint filed, coincided with new development permits. Water lines, shoreline adjustments, property annexations, all creeping closer to my boundary line. That's when I stopped feeling annoyed and started feeling hunted. I began to wonder if her real goal wasn't control, but eviction. Because you can't sell lakefront property at luxury prices if an old family cabin sits in the middle of your view. And deep down, I realized, this wasn't about rules. It was about ownership. And Claudia Hensley didn't just want my compliance. She wanted my land. Judges live on paper trails. Evidence doesn't lie. It just waits for someone patient enough to read between the lines. So I built one. First, cameras. Motion activated, night vision, time-stamped down to the second. One at the front gate, another watching the dock, two more overlooking the boathouse and shoreline. If Claudia so much as sneezed in my direction, I wanted it on film. Then I went to the county recorder's office, the same brick courthouse where my grandfather filed this property deed nearly 80 years ago. The smell hit me the moment I walked in: old paper, dust, and bureaucracy. The archivist, a woman named Janet, looked up over her glasses when she recognized me. "Judge Harlan," she said. "You hear about those HOA folks again?" I smiled politely. "Just checking the old parcel maps. All of them, every update since 1946. 3 hours later, surrounded by yellowed maps and manila folders, I found it. My land. Parcel 12B. Independent private land. Not under Marin Bluff's HOA jurisdiction. Stamped. Certified. Recorded. Uncontested for 78 years. Case closed, right? Wrong. Because something new was tucked in the back of the file. A clean, modern document printed on glossy paper. Dated just 3 months earlier. Annexation Addendum. According to this, Parcel 12B was pending inclusion under Marin Bluff's HOA boundaries. It even had a signature block, mine. Except, I had never seen it. And across the bottom in elegant cursive, C. Hensley, HOA President. I felt that slow, heavy burn of anger that starts in your chest and climbs to your throat. Not rage. Something colder. The kind of fury that organizes itself. The signature wasn't just sloppy. It was wrong. She'd forged a legal document to rewrite jurisdiction. And in doing so, she'd turned an HOA dispute into criminal fraud. I copied everything, every version, every timestamp, every notarized seal. Then I requested the digital log from the county clerk's database. The entry for the annexation addendum showed it had been filed online at 2:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. The user ID matched one of the HOA board's computers. She'd used her own system. Her arrogance was her fingerprint. That night, I sat in my office staring at the evidence spread across my desk. The rhythmic tick of the wall clock sounded like a gavel. Tick. Forgery. Tick. Fraud. Tick. Obstruction of property records. It was no longer ignorance or overreach. It was strategy. She hadn't just wanted to control me. She wanted to erase me from the map entirely. So I did what judges do best. I stopped reacting and started building a case. I opened a new binder, labeled it Hensley versus Reality, and began printing every complaint, every fine, every false report. I created a timeline, cross-referenced with county filings, and noted patterns of harassment. Because when people like Claudia Hensley lie, they don't do it once. They build monuments to their lies. And all I had to do was start digging. That was the night I realized the truth. She wasn't fighting for community order. She was fighting for possession. And if she thought she could steal my land with a signature, she was about to learn what happens when you forge a judge's name. By summer, the neighborhood had split clean down the middle. On one side were the old locals, farm families, retirees, and long-timers who remembered when the lake wasn't fenced off by private access signs. People who'd borrowed my dock to launch canoes or shared pie at the county fair. They knew this land wasn't just mine, it was ours, a piece of shared history. On the other side were the new arrivals, suburban migrants from the city who'd traded traffic noise for lake views and thought a homeowners association meant order and prestige. To them, I was a relic in flannel, an eyesore in their catalog neighborhood. They didn't see a judge defending his family land. They saw a stubborn squatter lowering their property values. And Claudia Hensley? She saw opportunity. She weaponized social media like a surgeon with a scalpel. The first post appeared on the Marin Bluffs community Facebook page, written in that sweet, performative tone that sounds helpful but bleeds venom between the lines. Community safety alert. Unlicensed structures and unauthorized water usage have been detected along the Lake Marin shoreline. Please avoid the area until the board confirms environmental safety compliance. Within an hour, the comments section exploded. Who is this guy? Why doesn't he just follow the rules? Someone needs to report him. Some residents tried defending me, quietly, cautiously, but their comments vanished within minutes. Deleted. Replaced with Claudia's replies about protecting community integrity. She had the moderators, the mailing lists, and the narrative. I had truth, but truth doesn't trend online. Then came the whispers. At the gas station, people stared a little longer before saying hello. At the diner, conversations died when I walked through the door. The air would thicken with silence, pierced only by the sound of coffee cups meeting saucers. Even my mail started arriving opened. Packages torn. Letters folded wrong, like someone had thumbed through them before delivery. One morning, I found my trash can tipped over, its contents scattered like a warning. The lid was neatly placed beside it, deliberate, not random. I told myself it didn't bother me. But it did. Because harassment from one person you can fight. Harassment from a community, that's isolation. Claudia had turned neighbors into informants. She created a digital neighborhood watch group where my property was case number 001. Every movement recorded, every rumor shared. Someone even sent drone footage of me mowing my lawn. They called it evidence of unpermitted grading. I'd spent 20 years maintaining order from the bench. Now I was the defendant in a courtroom without walls, convicted by gossip and emojis. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about perception. And perception, when poisoned, becomes stronger than proof. I started keeping to myself. Grocery runs at dawn. Windows covered at night. Silence became armor. But something changed inside me during that silence. I stopped feeling like a victim and started thinking like a prosecutor again. Because Claudia wasn't just a bully with a clipboard. She was orchestrating something bigger, a campaign of control. And every campaign leaves fingerprints. That's when I realized I wasn't fighting one woman. I was fighting the story she'd written about me. And the only way to win was to rewrite it. When intimidation failed, Claudia reached for the oldest weapon in her arsenal, paperwork. The envelope came by courier, thick and self-important, stamped, civil complaint. Inside was a lawsuit claiming I was guilty of unlawful occupancy and violation of community standards. I read it twice. Then again, slowly. The notary's signature at the bottom caught my eye. Hensley. Same last name. Same looping H. Classic Karen tactic. Fake legal intimidation. I responded the way I've done for 20 years in court. Calmly, cleanly, by the book. Filed a motion to dismiss, attached my certified land title, recorded deed, and copies of every historical map dating back to 1946. Every document proved one thing beyond question. Parcel 12B was never, and could never be, part of Marin Bluffs' HOA jurisdiction. I assumed that would end it. But Claudia wasn't playing by legal rules. She was playing by political ones. Days later, I opened my door to find 2 county inspectors standing on my porch, hard hats on, clipboards ready. Anonymous safety complaints, one said. Reports of structural hazards, potential dock instability. They combed through every inch of my property for 2 hours. Found nothing. But the point wasn't proof, it was pressure. Each inspection bought her time, sowed doubt, made the system question me instead of her. A week later came the next blow. A trespassing warning, hand-delivered by none other than her brother-in-law, a sheriff's deputy. He smirked like the power went straight to his badge. "Judge or not," he said, leaning against his cruiser, "you step foot on that shared access road again, you'll be arrested." He made sure the body cam was off when he said it. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Up until then, I'd played defense, hoping reason would win, that truth would cut through her noise. But reason doesn't stop corruption. Power recognizes only one language: accountability. That night, I sat at my desk surrounded by folders, recordings, inspection reports, and the falsified complaint. I realized I wasn't just dealing with a manipulative neighbor. I was facing a network. She had family in law enforcement, friends in zoning, allies in county offices. A web of favors and silence holding her empire together. Fine. If she wanted a legal war, she'd get one, on my battlefield. I began drafting a federal complaint: civil rights violations, fraudulent filings, conspiracy to interfere with property ownership. I logged every incident, every false report, every forged document. I pulled public records on her HOA legal counsel, and found the man had been disbarred 2 years ago in another county. The picture was forming. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was organized extortion wearing a community badge. And for the first time since this started, I felt something close to calm. Because now I had something stronger than outrage. I had evidence. And I knew exactly how to use it. That was the night I stopped being a victim and started acting like a litigator preparing for trial. No one wins a war alone, not even a judge. When Claudia turned the system against me, I turned to the people who knew how to fight back within it. My first call was to Erin Doyle, my former law clerk, now a state prosecutor with a reputation for shredding corporate fraud cases like paper through a shredder. She didn't hesitate. "Send me everything," she said. "If they're falsifying land records, we'll dig until the foundation cracks." Next, I called Rachel Kim, a local reporter who specialized in HOA corruption. She'd covered 3 separate scandals in the county, 2 of which ended with arrests. I invited her to the lake under the pretense of coffee. Within 10 minutes, she had her recorder running. "Judge, if half of what you're telling me is true," she said, "this could be the biggest HOA embezzlement case in the state." Together, we started mapping the threads: every questionable transaction, every zoning petition, every payment tied to Marin Bluffs. That's when help arrived from an unexpected ally, Mr. Jansen, a retired accountant who lived 2 houses down. He knocked on my door one evening, hat in hand, thumb drive in pocket. "Been collecting this since she fined me for my flagpole," he said with a wry smile. I plugged it in. Inside were dozens of spreadsheets, payment logs, vendor invoices, and something even better: cross-referenced banking data from public record filings. The numbers didn't lie. Between the HOA's collected maintenance fees and beautification assessments, over $187,400 had been funneled to a company called Marin Maintenance LLC. A quick corporate search showed one officer of record, Elliot Hensley, Claudia's cousin. Fake contractor. Real money. Textbook embezzlement. When I told Erin, she whistled softly. "That's your motive. She's not just protecting property values, she's protecting the books." Rachel started digging deeper into county filings. She found more breadcrumbs: falsified invoices, overlapping signatures, inflated landscaping costs billed to non-existent addresses. We were no longer speculating. We were building a case file. I created a new binder labeled Operation Mirror Lake. Inside, forged annexation documents, false environmental complaints, the HOA's fraudulent payment trail, security footage of her patrols trespassing on my land. For the first time in months, I felt the tide shift. I wasn't alone anymore. Claudia had built her empire on silence, intimidation, isolation, and paperwork. But now, silence had cracked. I had a prosecutor ready to strike, a journalist prepared to expose, and a community accountant who'd been quietly collecting evidence longer than I had. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd tried to weaponize paperwork, and I was going to bury her under it. What began as harassment was now a full-blown criminal investigation in the making. And as I stared at the evidence glowing on my laptop screen, one thought echoed in my head. She wanted a fight in the courtroom? Fine. But this time, it would be her name on the docket. Once the pieces aligned, the real machinery of justice started to move. Erin, the state prosecutor, looped in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Within a week, a joint task force was quietly reviewing every HOA ledger, email, and payment record we'd uncovered. The fraud wasn't small-scale anymore. It was organized, deliberate, and sprawling across multiple counties. They needed someone inside. So they planted an undercover agent, posing as a new contractor bidding for shoreline restoration work. His name was Mark Delaney, though that wasn't his real one. He played the part perfectly, polite, eager, and just naive enough to earn Claudia's trust. While the bureau worked their angle, I worked mine. I upgraded my surveillance setup. Cameras hidden in the porch beams, microphones disguised in the dock posts, and motion sensors tied to a private server with automatic timestamping. If Claudia so much as breathed near my property, I wanted evidence in triplicate. Then came the break. At a closed-door HOA board meeting, Mark's wire caught Claudia in full color and high definition, voice dripping with arrogance. "The judge thinks he's untouchable," she sneered. "Wait till I have him arrested for trespassing. Then we'll rezone that land and sell lake access to the developers. They'll thank me for it." The room laughed. Glasses clinked. She just confessed, on record, to conspiracy, fraud, and intent to falsify zoning documents. 2 weeks later, the FBI traced a $90,000 transfer from the HOA's general fund straight into Claudia's personal brokerage account. Transaction note: Community Improvement Reserve. Another $45,000 had gone to her cousin's fake maintenance company. The financial trail read like a confession written in numbers. Fraud, forgery, wire transfer violations, money laundering. Each one a felony. But in cases like this, timing is everything. Moved too soon, she'd plead ignorance, blame the board, maybe even skate on technicalities. We needed one more move, one that would expose her greed in front of everyone she'd manipulated. So we waited. Watched. Tracked every message, every anonymous complaint, every suspicious transaction. Meanwhile, the FBI's undercover vendor reported that Claudia was planning a new, emergency infrastructure project. A fake shoreline repair that would justify draining the HOA reserve fund one last time, before transferring the money into an offshore account. That would be her final, undeniable mistake. I spent long nights at my desk, listening to recorded board meetings through headphones. The sound of her voice, calm, condescending, certain she'd never be caught, was like static under my skin. She thought she was rewriting the rules. But she'd forgotten who wrote them in the first place. This was no longer about fines or boundaries. It was about justice. And the moment she signed that fraudulent authorization form, she wouldn't just incriminate herself. She'd drag her entire operation into the light. The trap was set. All we had to do was let her walk right into it. Every good takedown needs one thing: a stage. And I built mine plank by plank. I sent Claudia an email, formal, polite, dripping with exactly the kind of conciliatory tone she couldn't resist. Subject: Proposal for mediation and resolution. Claudia, I've been reconsidering our dispute. Perhaps it's time we worked together. I'd like to discuss the possibility of formally joining Marin Bluff's HOA to avoid future misunderstandings. Within an hour, she replied. I'm pleased to hear that, Judge. Let's schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience. Her ego couldn't resist the idea of winning. The FBI and the state prosecutor helped choreograph the scene down to the last detail. We'd meet in my office, neutral ground but wired wall to wall. Microphones in the lamp fixtures, cameras in the corners, live feed to the surveillance van outside. On the appointed afternoon, Claudia arrived precisely on time, dressed like she was attending a victory parade. Behind her came 2 board members, clipboard warriors, and a man in a suit who introduced himself as counsel for the HOA. I already knew he'd been disbarred. A county deputy followed close behind, her brother-in-law, again, pretending this was some kind of official negotiation. She entered with a smile that could slice glass. "Judge Harlan," she said, taking a seat across from me, "I'm glad you've come to your senses. Cooperation is the cornerstone of good community relations." I gestured toward the folder on my desk. "Then you'll appreciate this," I said. "A formal document acknowledging the HOA's jurisdiction and clarifying ownership. Just a matter of record-keeping, of course." Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She didn't even read the fine print. It was a perfect replica of the forged annexation document she'd filed months ago, right down to the watermark and formatting. The only difference? This one was prepared by the FBI's legal tech team, with microprinting in the margins and a hidden recording clause embedded in the header. She signed it. Right there, in front of witnesses. And as she capped the pen, she looked up with that familiar smirk. "There," she said. "Now it's official. Consider the record corrected." The lawyer nodded approvingly. The deputy smiled. The board members exchanged glances like victory was certain. But the moment her pen left the paper, the FBI agent monitoring the feed from the van outside keyed his mic. "We have probable cause. Moving in." Seconds later, the sound of tires crunching gravel filled the air. The front door swung open, and two agents stepped in, badges out, calm and precise. "Mrs. Hensley," one said, "we need you to step away from the desk." She blinked, confused. "What is this? What's happening?" I leaned back, folded my hands, and said quietly, "Ma'am, you just authenticated your own forgery." For a heartbeat, the room went dead silent. Then the color drained from her face. Her lawyer stammered something about misunderstanding. The deputy reached for his phone but froze when he saw the second agent blocking the exit. As they read her the charges, fraud, forgery, wire fraud, and conspiracy, I sat perfectly still, watching the empire she'd built on arrogance crumble one signature at a time. The cameras captured everything. Every word, every expression, every shred of disbelief. And for the first time since the lights flashed across my cabin weeks earlier, I finally exhaled. Justice wasn't just coming, it had arrived. The air changed before the door opened. Thick, electric, expectant. Then came the sound, heavy boots, quick orders, the clatter of authority moving with purpose. The front door burst open. 3 FBI agents swept in, followed by 2 sheriff's deputies from the neighboring county, neutral officers, not connected to Claudia's brother-in-law. Their jackets read Federal Agent in bold yellow. "Claudia Hensley," one of them announced, voice firm and echoing through the room. "You're under arrest for forgery, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Step away from the desk and keep your hands visible." Her smile faltered for the first time since I'd met her. "This is absurd," she snapped. "You have no right to, ma'am," the agent said, calm and professional. "We have the right, the warrant, and about 90 hours of recorded evidence." Her lawyer stood up so fast his chair toppled over. "This is outrageous. My client has been..." The lead agent cut him off smoothly. "Sir, you might want to call your own counsel. Your firm handled the fraudulent filings." The color drained from his face like ink bleeding off paper. Claudia's shock morphed into fury. Her voice cracked as she pointed at me. "This is a setup. He's using his position to frame me. You can't do this. I run this community." I looked at her, calm as a still lake. "No," I said quietly. "You ran it into the ground." The agents cuffed her hands behind her back, chrome bracelets glinting in the afternoon light. Her designer bracelets clinked against them, the sound hollow and poetic. Outside, the scene had already drawn a crowd. Neighbors stood along the road, some whispering, some openly filming on their phones. The same people who'd once believed her posts now watched her walk past in handcuffs. The sunlight hit the water just right, reflecting off the lake she tried to steal, The lake my grandfather had built this home beside. As the agents guided her down the steps, she caught sight of the dock she'd once called an eyesore. Her jaw tightened. She tried to erase it, to erase me.